I love talking with passionate business owners. Their enthusiasm is irresistible, their knowledge is invaluable, and their wisdom holds the keys to transforming your passion into a successful business. As a marketing strategist, I help people around the world innovate and grow their business. I'm Jay Hamilton Roth, and this is Business with Passion. This two-part episode features guests who help others to find, grow, and magnify their passionate businesses. The Sonoma Mountain Business Cluster's mission is to create high-value jobs in the North Bay. They provide expertise to grow businesses through their mentoring program, in addition to hosting networking events, educational events, access to capital, and business services.
Why do you need a business plan? Most common answer received is, because I want to get funding. I need financing, I need money, I need capital. That's the wrong answer. You need a business plan because without one you have no idea. Who was it? Yogi Berra said, you know, if you don't know where you're going, you might end up somewhere else or someplace else. So it's really kind of true. The plan, I'm a big believer that the value of the plan is in the process of planning, not the document that you get at the end of it. It means you've really thought through how you're going to make this business work and what it takes to make this business work. So, you know, maybe it's a little bit of a pet peeve or whatever, but no, the answer is not, I need a business plan because I'm going to get financing. You may need the business plan in order to get financing, but it's only one piece along the way, and you need the business plan regardless of whether you're going out for venture capital or angel capital or not.
My business is all about indoor air quality and reducing energy bills. We manufacture what's called a high-efficiency electronic air cleaner that is comparatively, superior in terms of taking out the bad stuff that tends to make people sick. While doing so, it also improves the airflow so much that it actually reduces the energy consumed by the HVAC system. Up to about 50% of all the energy consumed in buildings across the United States is from the heating and ventilation system. And a huge contributor to that is because of the airflow. So where our business comes in, as you will be able to see behind me, is that we have the ability, and through this unique technology, to remove those terrible particles that tend to make people sick and cause them to be away from work and school and make your house unhealthy, while at the same time driving the energy consumption down to the point where a high-efficiency system like this can actually pay for itself. So far we've raised about $2.75 million. We're currently raising a new round of $3 million. What the money has allowed us to do so far is to take our technology, productize it, finish the patent work on it and get it protected so that it can't be stolen, and then take it from productization to manufacturing capability and scale. So you're now kind of prepared for the next infusion of capital, which is for expansion. And we're right in the throes of that now. In fact, at this current date, we've just closed our first 2 national deals with national contractor companies that install systems like ours and have adopted our product. We're just about to close a deal with another international company that will be private labeling our products. And that money that we're going out to acquire will allow us to fund properly that expansion, along with new sales, new markets.
If you're not part of an incubator and you have a company or a plan for a company, so the first thing I'll say is, I'll give my short advertisement here, is like, we also have an affiliate program. So if you're not based here in the incubator, that might be something that interests you. But the checklist of things might be, number 1, make sure it's your passion. Starting a company is not easy. You need it to be your passion because there will be hard times. There'll be times when you doubt yourself. There'll be times when it, when the path is not always clear. So make sure it's your passion. Be comfortable with entrepreneurship. Be comfortable know enough about yourself that an entrepreneurial path is not just okay with you, but it's comfortable and you feel good with that. And maybe you say, oh, how do I know if I'm an entrepreneur? I can't tell you that for yourself, but I can give you some hints. I have a couple of definitions, none of which are classical. One of my definitions is, if you're an entrepreneur, you're unemployable. And people go, what? What does that mean? Generally, most people go on a path to the point where many entrepreneurs realize that they don't want to work for someone else. They want self-determination. They want to run their own show. And that's kind of my definition of being unemployable. So that's an interesting thing. Another definition of entrepreneur, an entrepreneur is you deal well with ambiguity. And there's a lot of ambiguity in a startup company. There's many different paths that you can follow. Finding the right path or finding the right direction, you have to be able to deal well with that and finding your own path. So those are two things when you're at that early stage of figuring it out. You need to do a good, honest opportunity assessment at the front end. As in, don't drink your own Kool-Aid. It needs to be realistic. So many times, we get caught up in the cool new technology or whatever it is. There has to be a business there. So a new technology is not enough. It has to be a solid business and focus on the business side of it. If you're into this and you got a new technology, that's like the ante on the table. It's expected that you put it up. It's expected that it's there. Now you got to show them that it's a good business. And not all new technologies or good ideas are good businesses. So you have to have the discipline of going through that self, making sure, like those questions that I asked before, does your product address a significant problem? Is it a pain that someone will pay you money to take away? Is there a large market? Is there a significant opportunity to build this business? Do you have something special? Some intellectual property, a barrier to entry, something there that makes what you do special. So make sure that you really understand that, because many companies, particularly if they're going to have to raise money, you have to understand all those things. Otherwise, you won't be able to raise a dime. Surround yourself with great people, advisors, partners, the people that you work with. I give an example from, Advanced Digital Optics at ADO. Prior to big trade shows and things, this is a common story. We were there till 3, 4 in the morning. One of the guys worked 36 hours straight, never went to bed. Why? It's not for the big payoff at the end. It's because you don't want to let the guy standing next to you, or girl, it could be, you don't want to let them down. And it's that kind of loyalty and that comes from having people that you really trust, that you believe in, that believe in you. So forge that team, and you're gonna kiss a few frogs before you find your prince, But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't go and kiss a few frogs. It takes time to find that magic chemistry. But when you find it with a startup, that magic chemistry with that team, you'll know it.
I see the key strategic insights of the Sonoma Mountain Business Cluster success as, first, Michael Newell, the executive director, has the right mix of technical, management, and entrepreneurial experience to lead the incubator's growth. Next, incubators provide business owners with a nurturing community of expertise and support. Lastly, the 80% 5-year incubator success rate proves the benefit of the incubator's model. My next guest, John Hagel, as co-chairman of the Deloitte Center for Edge Innovation, conducts original research for new corporate growth. John helps companies effectively reshape their business strategies. He recently co-authored the book, The Power of Pull, which highlights how passionate thinking will magnify access, attraction, and achievement of business prosperity.
I kind of backed into my career. I actually went to both business school and law school, and I found law school actually very stultifying, particularly because it seemed to be focused on identifying and addressing problems, whereas I was more focused on opportunity and possibility. I saw this notice in the law school recruiting office that this firm called Boston Consulting Group was interviewing. I had no idea who they were, except they weren't a law firm. But what I found really exciting about consulting was the opportunity to see lots of different businesses and people and engage in opportunities that they were wrestling with in a very short period of time, to see all the patterns start to emerge from these issues. So I really enjoyed that experience. I did, after 2 years at BCG, I had this idea for starting a business, and I left BCG, and that was actually my opportunity to move out to California. My networks tend to occupy two very different domains. Most of my work, I spent 16 years at McKinsey & Company, which tends to work, it's a consulting firm that focuses on the Fortune 500 companies. So as a result of that work, I had a tremendous opportunity to build a set of relationships with senior executives of those companies. In parallel, I also have written a number of books related to the internet and new technology, new generations of technology. So I actually have a very rich network of connections in Silicon Valley, particularly with entrepreneurs who are focused on the internet as an opportunity to create new businesses. And so it's an interesting cross-fertilization of those two domains, which helps to really drive a lot of my interest and work today. Well, about 3 years ago, I got approached by a very large firm, Deloitte, who have their roots in accounting and auditing, but have built out a very large consulting business over time. And they approached me with a proposition that they wanted to start a research center here in Silicon Valley, and they thought that I would be the perfect person to run that research center. I actually turned them down several times because they were a very large firm, and at the time I was off on my own. But they were very persuasive and persistent, and they ultimately convinced me to set up this research center. We call it the Center for the Edge. We tend to love paradox, and our name in itself is a paradox. How can you have a center for the edge? But as part of setting up that research center, I persuaded Deloitte to bring in 2 other people who I had collaborated with in various forms over the previous decade. One is a man by the name of John Seeley Brown, who for the engineering community within Silicon Valley is extremely well known. For several decades he ran Xerox's Palo Alto Research Center and was the chief scientist at Xerox. And so he's very complementary to me in the sense that he's an engineer by background, has deep technology expertise. I'm more focused on business strategy, although I have a love of technology. And then the third person that we brought in was a man by the name of Lang Davison, who we had collaborated with in many contexts, again, over previous years. At the time we recruited him in, he was the editor for the McKinsey Quarterly, which is McKinsey's thought leadership journal, and extraordinarily effective at taking very complicated ideas and making them much more accessible to a general audience. So it was the combination of the 3 of us that really helped to frame the agenda and the initiatives that the Center for the Edge has been pursuing. Part of our message to executives of all kinds of companies is that in a time of growing uncertainty and more pressure, paradoxically, you do have to have a reasonably clear view of direction, where you want to be as a company, whether you're a 2-man company or a 30,000 employee company. Have a sense of direction, because if you don't have that, you get spread way too thin, and I think this is particularly a problem with smaller companies who have limited resources. If you're just reacting to anything that's happening on a day-to-day basis, you will try to cover too many bases, and you won't have the critical mass against any particular initiative to get the kind of impact you need to build a sustaining business. And I think also from a smaller business perspective, a message that we are communicating to very large companies as well is that increasingly value comes from connection, from building out relationships with other companies and other people. And you can get a lot of leverage. In the past decade, we've been seduced into this notion of financial leverage. You just pile up debt, you get more money to invest in your business, but the problem is that debt comes with a price. You have to pay interest on it, and even if the economy goes down, you still have to pay that interest. So you're stuck, particularly in a downturn, with a very big burden. On the other hand, if you think about leverage as capability leverage, of just finding people who have capabilities that are complementary with yours and can add more value to your customers if you work together to deliver that value, that's a kind of leverage which actually works both in good times and bad times. You can scale it up and down based on the level of demand in the marketplace. So that's, I think, something that's easier for small businesses with limited resources to really understand and embrace than these very large companies where the whole instinct is not invented here. It has to be done within our four walls. We have to have tight control over it, and we have the resources to do it. So why would we reach out and connect to other companies as aggressively as we're certainly recommending? When we talk about push, what we're talking about is a basic business model that has emerged and become kind of central to most businesses. It's the notion that your first challenge is to predict and forecast demand, and then based on that prediction or forecast, organize all the people and resources to be in the right place at the right time to meet that demand. And that's worked extremely well. It's the basis of all of our large companies today. They grew to scale and became very successful using that model. In a world that has more and more uncertainty and volatility to it, those kinds of predictions and forecasts become much more challenging. And so what we're focusing on in a world of pull is the notion of, instead of trying to forecast and predict, try to build out platforms, try to connect with others in ways where you can draw out people and resources when you need them and where you need them. So it gives you much greater flexibility and an opportunity to scale, because one of the things that we're looking at in pull is not just how you do that with 2 or 3 key business partners, but how you can do that across hundreds, thousands, even hundreds of thousands of business partners on a global scale. That becomes extraordinarily powerful and is the key, in our minds at least, to how you can make small moves, if they're smartly made, yield very significant long-term results. If you want people to really experiment, improvise, innovate, they're going to be doing things that you couldn't have predicted or forecast in advance. So if you don't provide them with an environment and platform to access the resources, to draw out the people and resources when they need them, where they need them, they're going to be forced to follow a manual that tells them in advance exactly what to do and how to do it. So both in terms of reacting to unanticipated problems and encouraging people and giving them the tools and environment to innovate, that is where pull really has the greatest value. I think one of the key themes in the book, The Power of Pull, is this notion of the increasing importance of passion. And when most executives hear me talk about passion, they kind of crook their head a bit and say, why would you be talking about that? That's not what we do as a business. And there are a lot of reasons that we tend to focus on the importance of passion, the growing importance of passion in business. One of them has to do with the notion that if economic value comes from knowledge flows, from connecting and building relationships with others so you can learn faster, there's a very interesting finding in our research that the level of passion that an employee has for their work is directly related, to the amount of connection they have. So passionate workers are much more connected, and you can look at it on a whole series of dimensions, everything from going to conferences, attending conferences related to your work, or participating in social media related to your work. That relationship exists. So if you're not passionate about your work, you are going to be less connected. And if you're an employer and your people are not passionate about work, they're going to be less connected. So that creates a serious concern in terms of what is the level of passion in our workforce. One of the findings we had was that the levels of passion overall, and this goes across virtually every industry, we looked at 13 different industries, the level of passion never gets above 20% of the workforce. So no matter what industry you look at, passion levels are very low. And perhaps even greater concern, at least for larger companies, is the level of passion goes down as the size of the company goes up. So the most passionate workers are the workers who are self-employed, who are out on their own, running their own businesses. One of our beliefs is that, in fact, what we've seen over a period of decades is a flight of passion from larger companies. Larger companies are not built to encourage passion. In fact, in many respects, they stifle passion. And so the people who are really, really passionate tend to flee and go off to either smaller businesses or start their own companies. And I should say, when we talk about passion in this context, we do not mean happiness or satisfaction with the job. In fact, some of the most passionate people are some of the most frustrated people, because they see all the opportunity and possibility, and they see all those obstacles that have been put in their place, institutional obstacles that prevent them from achieving that opportunity and possibility. So that's an important dimension that I think every business person needs to focus on, is their own personal level of passion and the passion of the people who work with them and for them. In terms of the 3 levels of pull that we develop, there's a second level which has to do with the notion of attraction. How do you attract people and resources to you that you never even knew existed? And it becomes increasingly important and valuable in a world that is so rapidly changing. We increasingly no longer even know what questions to ask, what to search for. So being able to attract people and resources to you becomes more and more central. Now, many of us are familiar with the concept of serendipity. It happens all the time to us in our daily lives. We run into people or encounter things that we weren't aware of, and our reaction as we get familiar with them is to say, my God, that was so helpful, so valuable. You know, I wish I'd known about it before. In fact, while serendipity ultimately is about luck, you can shape serendipity. You can increase the probability and quantity and quality of the unexpected encounters. So part of it is where you spend your time. The other part, and it's both where you spend your time in physical space, so have you located in an area that has that opportunity for serendipity? Do you regularly travel out to other areas that have that opportunity for serendipity? And where do you spend your time in virtual environments? Our belief is that one of the increasing values of these networks like Facebook and Twitter is that unexpected encounter, the serendipity of encountering somebody that you weren't aware of, but my God, as soon as you find them, they're great. The other piece is how you spend your time, because the challenge, if you choose to locate in places where there are a lot of people, how do you become visible to those people? You know, how do you avoid getting lost in the crowd? And so there are a variety of practices that you can develop in these places that will increase the likelihood, again, of those unexpected encounters. So we think at the end of the day, there's an opportunity to be much more systematic in terms of our practices and approaches to maximize the probability of those unexpected encounters, and that's going to become more and more valuable in a time of growing uncertainty and economic pressure. If you're in a large organization, you're much more likely to be effective at pursuing your passion if you move out to the edge of the organization. That you need to find the areas of a large organization which are relatively new and having potential to grow more rapidly. Typically, those are areas where those bureaucratic rules and institutional practices that inhibit passion in the core are less of an issue for people trying to get impact. And so finding those edges, bringing together a group of people who share the passion on those edges, and really focusing on what kind of meaningful performance can we target and deliver that will start to demonstrate the power that we have, we think is a key formula for success. In the development of the book, we ended up defining 3 different levels of pull that are becoming increasingly important to both our personal success and success as companies and institutions. The 3rd level of pull in our mind is the most interesting one, and it has to do with the notion of pulling out of each of us our full potential, and that's ultimately the mark of success. Have we been able to pull out that potential that exists in all of us? It's part of the reason that we focus so much on passion as a catalyst and as a prerequisite for that 3rd level of pull. Because people who are passionate inevitably actually have a very fine sense of the potential. They're driven by that potential. They have a sense that if they invest the time and effort and connect with other people in the right way, they will drive to new levels of performance that have never been achieved before, and they're completely motivated by that quest. How do you create situations where you bring people together with very diverse backgrounds and focus them on a really challenging performance problem, where they have to engage with each other and debate with each other around their experiences, the knowledge, the tacit knowledge that they've accumulated, and test it against each other. One of the things that we talk about as becoming more and more important is this concept of productive friction. In business, in the quest for efficiency, we have tried to systematically eliminate friction. We actually believe that friction can be extremely productive if it focuses on really challenging performance problems and gets people to really engage at a profound level around their different points of view as to how to accomplish that performance goal. In crafting our personal sense of direction and our sense of direction as companies and businesses, we have to think in that dynamic way of where's the world going to be 5 to 10 years from now. Not just where we want to be, but how does that fit into the way the world is changing? And then come back and really re-examine what are we doing, and is that going to be sufficient for us to be successful in this future world?
I see the key strategic insights of John Hagel's success as: first, in becoming a consultant, John was able to see a wide view of how businesses become successful. Next, his well-researched books and speeches on business and innovation helped him grow a rich corporate network. Lastly, he now helps leaders see the big picture for achieving long-term business improvement. In this 2-part episode, my guests shared not only their own business backgrounds, but also provided a wealth of specific tips to help you find, grow, and magnify your own business. As a result, I hope that this episode has given you many good ideas for increasing your business with passion.